Hello, dear YouTube viewers, I hope you're doing well. Okay, so let's start our video. They say time heals everything, but for Ethan, the wounds of his past never truly closed. Every quiet morning felt the same: empty cups on the counter, the faint smell of old coffee, and a silence heavy enough to remind him of what once filled his home. As the camera lingers on Ethan sitting alone in a dim apartment, the light from the window fades slowly, mirroring the life that dimmed inside him. His eyes wander to a framed photograph of Clara, his ex-wife, her smile frozen in time, beautiful yet deceitful. The memories start to bleed through, pulling him into a world that once felt like perfection. The scenes shift quickly: laughter over candlelit dinners, the sound of sizzling pans in a small kitchen, the two of them dancing barefoot on a cold floor, whispering promises into the night. "You make me feel safe," Clara used to say, her voice warm, her eyes soft. Ethan would smile and reply, "Promise will never change." And she would laugh, the kind of laugh that makes a man believe in forever. But in his narration, Ethan's voice cuts through the memory. "I believed her when she said love was forever. I should have known forever had an expiry date." Then, the warmth begins to fade. What used to be laughter turns into silence. Clara starts staying late at work, or at least that's what she says. Her phone becomes her new companion, and her smile no longer reaches her eyes. Ethan tries to hold conversations, to understand what's wrong, but each attempt ends in irritation or dismissal. She snaps at him for small things, as if his very presence now irritates her. He notices her new perfume, her frequent phone checks, the way she hides her screen when he walks in. Still, he tries to believe it's stress, not distance. In the midst of this growing tension, Nora, Clara's best friend, often visits. She's gentle, thoughtful, always noticing the small cracks that Clara ignores. When Clara gets sharp or dismissive, Nora tries to ease the situation with humor or distraction. She's the kind of person who feels deeply but speaks little. Ethan appreciates her kindness, though he keeps his distance out of respect. Yet sometimes, when Clara walks away mid-conversation, Nora's eyes meet his with quiet sympathy, a wordless understanding that something precious is breaking right in front of them. Then comes the night everything collapses. Ethan finds a message, a few words that confirm what his heart had been whispering for weeks. Clara is seeing someone else. When he confronts her, the argument erupts like a storm that's been building too long. She doesn't deny it. Instead, she turns it around, says he's controlling, that he doesn't make her feel alive anymore, that she deserves more. Her words cut deep, not because they're cruel, but because they sound rehearsed, like excuses meant for herself more than him. Ethan doesn't scream. He doesn't beg. He just stands there, the weight of betrayal pressing down on him like air too heavy to breathe. After a long silence, he says quietly, "Someday you'll look back and realize what you threw away." Clara rolls her eyes, grabs her suitcase, and walks toward the door. As she steps out, Nora is there, standing by the doorway, her face pale and eyes full of something Ethan can't name: guilt, pity, maybe both. She doesn't say a word. Clara passes her without a glance, heels clicking sharply on the floor. For a moment, Nora looks like she wants to speak, but she doesn't. Ethan turns away, and the door closes behind them, leaving him in the silence that will define the next chapter of his life. The frame lingers on Ethan's face, tired, hollow, but strangely calm, as his narration fades back in. That's how she left. No goodbye. No closure. Just an echo of her perfume and a silence that felt louder than any scream. Months had passed since Clara walked out of Ethan's life, and the emptiness that once consumed him had turned into quiet discipline. He filled his mornings with routine, running before sunrise, hitting the gym, pouring his energy into his work. His apartment, once a museum of memories, now looked clean, minimal, and almost cold. The photo frames were gone, the walls repainted, and the spaces that once echoed with shared laughter now held only peace. He spoke less, smiled less, but lived more consciously. His narration ran softly over a montage of his new life. I stopped waiting for closure. I gave it to myself. Every now and then, his phone would buzz with a familiar name, Clara. How have you been? Just checking in. He never replied. Her messages felt like hooks thrown into calm water, testing if there were still waves underneath. There weren't. At least, that's what he told himself. Amid all this change, one person remained a quiet presence, Nora. She would text once in a while, nothing too personal, a reminder to eat, a casual "saw your new post, proud of you," or sometimes simply, "How are you holding up?" It wasn't romantic, but there was a warmth in her words that Clara's love had never given him, genuine care without an agenda. They met a few times for coffee. Nora always carried that same gentle sadness in her eyes, as if she still carried guilt for what happened between Ethan and Clara. One evening, as they sat by a small cafe window watching the rain, she finally said it. "I should have told you earlier about her. I knew more than I admitted." Ethan looked at her, calm and steady. "It wouldn't have changed what I had to learn," he said quietly. She nodded, understanding that he wasn't angry, just done with the past. Their connection deepened through silence more than words. There were no labels, no intentions. Just two people who had seen enough pain to value peace. Then one quiet Sunday afternoon, the past knocked on his door, literally. Clara stood there, perfectly dressed, her perfume heavy in the air, her smile rehearsed. "I was in the neighborhood," she said lightly, as if the years between them had been a misunderstanding. "Can we talk?" Ethan hesitated. For a moment, his old instinct, the one that once made him forgive too easily, flickered. But he stepped aside anyway, letting her in with polite restraint. Clara walked around the apartment slowly, eyes scanning the simplicity she once found dull. "You haven't changed much," she said with a small smirk. Then, tilting her head, she added, "I guess part of you still misses me." He didn't reply. He just leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying her with calm detachment. The silence made her uneasy, so she filled it with nostalgia, laughter about old memories, teasing remarks about the past, and subtle glances that tried to reignite something that was long dead. "I've been thinking about us," she finally said, her tone softer now. "Maybe we were just too young back then, too stubborn." Ethan listened, but didn't engage. His narration played over the moment. "There was a time I'd have begged for this moment. Now, I just wanted her gone." Sensing his resistance, Clara changed tactics. She smiled playfully, stepping closer. "How about dinner? For old time's sake. I'll cook, just like I used to." He hesitated but eventually agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly out of pity. That evening, she moved through his kitchen with practiced confidence, humming softly, pretending everything was normal. The table looked familiar, same dishes, same dim lighting, but the energy was gone. She poured wine, smiled across the table, and started reminiscing about their early days. "Remember that trip to the lake house? You couldn't stop staring at me." Her tone carried the same charm that once disarmed him, but this time he only smiled faintly. He wasn't the same man she left. As the conversation drifted toward their past intimacy, Ethan's phone buzzed. He picked it up casually under the table. A message from Nora glowed on the screen. "She's there, isn't she? Don't believe her." Ethan looked up slowly, his expression unchanged, but something in his eyes shifted. Clara didn't notice. She was too busy stirring her next line of manipulation. For the first time that night, Ethan realized the game she once played so well no longer worked. The woman sitting across from him wasn't power or temptation anymore. She was just a ghost, replaying her best performance in a story that had already ended. Dinner stretched into an uneasy quiet. The soft hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence that Clara tried to mask with forced laughter and charm. She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Ethan as if she could still read him the way she once did. "I made a mistake leaving you," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "I thought I was chasing happiness, but I only found emptiness." Ethan studied her carefully. She looked perfect, almost too perfect, makeup flawless, words chosen with precision. But something felt off. Her phone, lying face down on the table beside her, buzzed twice in quick succession. Clara's hand twitched, and for a fraction of a second, panic flashed in her eyes. She ignored it and reached for her glass of wine instead, forcing a small smile. Inside, Ethan's thoughts stirred, cold and detached. Old lies have new ways of showing up, his voice echoed in his mind. He didn't ask about the messages. He didn't have to. The same instincts that once begged for truth now simply recognized patterns. When she leaned closer, pretending vulnerability, he quietly pushed his chair back. "Excuse me a second," he said, walking toward the kitchen under the pretense of refilling his drink. The moment he turned his back, Clara quickly flipped her phone over, checking the screen with visible tension. Ethan caught the reflection in the glass door, the flash of a man's name, the string of unread messages. His suspicions settled into certainty. Before he could decide whether to confront her, the doorbell rang. Clara froze mid-sentence. Her eyes widened slightly, her body stiffening. "Who could that be?" she asked, her voice suddenly tight. Ethan moved to the door without answering. When he opened it, Nora stood there, calm, composed, holding a small brown envelope in her hand. Her expression was serious but not cold. Clara's face drained of color. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her tone sharp and defensive. Nora stepped inside slowly, her eyes never leaving Clara's. "I think Ethan deserves to know the truth," she said quietly. Her voice carried the kind of certainty that makes lies crumble. The air in the room thickened. Ethan looked between them, sensing something much deeper than a surprise visit. Clara crossed her arms, trying to sound unfazed. "This isn't your business, Nora." But Nora didn't flinch. She turned toward Ethan and held out the envelope. "She didn't just cheat once," she began. "She was seeing multiple people, including someone I used to love. That's why I couldn't face you back then." Ethan took the envelope, silent. Inside were photos, messages, proof, dates. His eyes skimmed over the evidence that confirmed what he'd already felt in his gut. Clara's sudden return, her charm, her confessions, all timed perfectly after her recent breakup. Nora continued, her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "Her new relationship ended last month. He found out everything and left her. She came back here because she thought you'd still be waiting." Clara's voice cracked. "That's not true." "Nora, stop lying." Nora cut her off, her voice rising for the first time. "Stop pretending. You used everyone, even me. You ruined my relationship just to hide your own mistakes." Ethan stood still, unreadable. The room felt heavy with truths that had been waiting too long to surface. Clara's mask finally broke. Tears welled in her eyes, her voice trembling. "I thought maybe we could start over," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Ethan. I was lost." He looked at her for a long moment. His face was calm, but his silence spoke volumes. Then he said, softly but firmly, "You didn't hurt me this time. You freed me." The words hung in the air like a final verdict. Clara broke down completely, covering her face with trembling hands. "I didn't want it to end like this," she sobbed. Ethan glanced at Nora, who stood quietly now, sadness in her eyes but also relief. "Thank you," he said simply, "for finally telling me the truth." Clara turned toward him one last time, searching for even a flicker of emotion, pity, anger, anything that proved she still mattered. But there was nothing left to read. His expression was peaceful, distant, finished. Realizing she'd lost her hold over both of them, Clara grabbed her purse, muttered something incoherent, and stormed out the door. The sound of her heels faded down the hallway, leaving behind a silence that felt different this time, not empty, but clean. Ethan stood still for a while, then exhaled deeply, as if releasing years of weight from his chest. The storm had passed, and all that remained was truth, painful, but purifying. That night, the apartment was wrapped in silence. The same walls that once echoed with arguments now felt strangely peaceful. Ethan stood by the window, the soft city lights flickering against the glass. His reflection stared back, older, calmer, untouched by the chaos that once consumed him. He held his phone in his hand for a long time, scrolling through old photos, messages, memories that no longer hurt but no longer meant anything either. His voice filled the quiet, steady and thoughtful. Sometimes closure doesn't come from their apology, but from finally seeing who they really are. With one final exhale, he deleted Clara's number, the photos, and every trace of her that still lived inside his phone, and, symbolically, inside him. The screen went dark, but his heart felt lighter. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Nora stepped inside, still in the same calm grace she carried earlier. She didn't speak much, she didn't need to. The two sat at the small kitchen table, cups of tea steaming between them. The air carried that rare kind of quiet where no words are needed to feel understood. After a few minutes, Nora looked down at her cup, then back at him. "I always cared about you," she said softly. "More than I should have. But you were hers, and I didn't want to cross that line." Ethan listened, his expression gentle. He could see the sincerity in her eyes. No hidden motives, no performance, just truth. He smiled faintly and replied, "Loyalty, that's what I was missing all along." The words hung between them, not heavy but warm. For a brief moment, their hands brushed as they reached for their cups, a small spark of something unspoken passing between them. Not passion, not urgency, just quiet understanding. They didn't rush it. Neither of them needed to. Weeks passed. The chill of winter gave way to a gentler warmth, and the world outside seemed softer somehow. Ethan and Nora walked side by side through a park one afternoon, the sunlight filtering through the trees, the sound of children playing somewhere in the distance. There was no grand confession, no cinematic kiss, just peace. Ethan's narration returned, calm and reflective. When love ends with betrayal, it doesn't mean life ends too. Sometimes, truth walks in smiling, just when lies walk out the door. As they continued walking, Nora laughed quietly at something he said, a laugh that felt real, effortless. Ethan looked at her, not with longing, but with gratitude, the kind that comes when life finally gives you something pure after taking so much. The camera slowly panned upward, catching the golden light spreading across the horizon, the symbolic glow of freedom, healing, and quiet beginnings. The music swelled softly, emotional but hopeful. Fade out, a new chapter begins, not with revenge, not with regret, but with peace. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe. Our channel Awesome Visual Story.